upstairs? I didn't.
There she is.
Thank you, Teresa.
Oh, there, naturally.
Now we're
You want
cooking.
something hard to right now?
We're waiting for someone who showed up at 6 o'clock in error. So we'll be proceeding shortly.
Oh, he's here.
Okay, good.
Hi.
All right, it's 7 o'clock. This is a hearing held by the Bolton Historical Commission. And first, I would like to introduce the members of the commission. We have Jean Marie Padovano, Robert Bush, I'm Martha Remington, the chairman, Alice Coggeshall, and William Nichols. And I want to point out, we have a sign-up sheet out in the vestibule. Everyone who's here, please sign and so we can have a record of who has shown up for this hearing. I'm going to read the hearing notice. The Bolton Historical Commission will hold a public hearing under the provisions of the demolition delay bylaw on Wednesday, March 2nd, 2016 at 7 o'clock p.m. in the Town Hall, 663 Main Street, Bolton, Mass. 01740, to consider a demolition permit application filed by Michelle Tuck for the First Parish Church of Bolton, formerly known as the Federated Church of Bolton, for a 19th century shed, Bolton Resource 398, located at 642 Main Street, Assessor's Map 2, Parcel 20. So we're lucky enough to have some people here in attendance. I would like to recognize that the shed in back of the parsonage at the Stephen P. Gardner House, 642 Main Street, it was discovered in January, was in a state of disrepair, and so there was some cleanup going on. And the church filed the demolition permit application that we received on the 20th of January. And that started a process which has a very strict timeline whereby the Historical Commission examines the information that we have about this historical resource, which is located in the Bolton Center, National Register Historic District. And we look at the survey information, which was recorded in that by our preservation consultant, Ann Forbes. And the information on this structure was that it was around the turn of the 20th century, 1900 to 1920. And the church had owned the property for 50 years, starting in 1873. In 1943, it reverted to a private residence, and the structure was used for a different purpose at that time. And then in 1953, I believe, the church purchased the property again. And this roughly 15 foot by 18 foot shed, or small barn, has a history that was a little deeper than we had discovered when it was put on the National Register in 1997. We had our preservation consultant take another look at the information on the property, and I do have copies of the new survey that's been filed with the Massachusetts Historical Commission. We were allowed by the church to go and photograph it extensively. Bob Bush did that. And throughout the information that was gleaned from the extra 2 to 3 weeks of preservation consultant work, it was ascertained that this shed might probably be represented in the John Warner Barber woodcut of which is familiar to most people as kind of an entrance headed west on Route 117 that shows this house at 642 Main Street as the house in the very foreground, and the former town hall, the former church, and many other historical resources as you travel through our main street in town. So one really good thing that has come out of this application is we have a much more thorough historic survey of the property. And it appears that Stephen P. Gardner, who was a very important person in town when he lived here, the house was built around 1798, he apparently used, instead of his Mercedes, a small cart with two wheels that was pulled by one horse, and the estate showed that that chaise, or shay as they would call it, one-horse shay in this country, was used for his traveling around the town. He was an important merchant. And there were other buildings that were there at this property as well. And it appeared that the shed was just big enough to protect that fancy chaise in one section, and probably originally had room for one horse stall. It has been used for other purposes. It's in like 5 parts now. When the private owners were there in the World War II period, it was a hen house. It was discovered that currently, or at the time the permit application was filed, there was asbestos siding on the side of the shed, and so that was removed. It would have to be removed anyway when it was demolished, and so the asbestos siding has been taken off. There's a lovely 12 light window at the gable end on the north, and a sliding barn door was added on the east side. The roof is in very bad condition on the east side, fairly good condition on the west side. And the church decided that they really don't have a use for it. It seemed to be in not the best condition, and so they asked permission if they could demolish it. So I would like to ask some of the people in the at the hearing here. First of all, I'd like to introduce Michelle Tuck, who is representing the church with the application. And we have Reverend Richard Jones, who currently lives in the parsonage on this property at the Stephen P. Gardner House. If you have any questions or comments about why you felt that rather than repurpose this, it was something that really had fulfilled its usefulness there on the property.
So, if you don't mind, I'll go ahead, and if you want to interrupt, go right ahead. We had talked about this shed a while ago. So I've been on the property and maintenance committee for 8 years, probably, about that. And a while ago, we talked about it. Because the hole had already developed sometime
In the roof.
in the roof.
Looks like a tree fell through it, actually.
Yeah. The roofing was not of particularly high quality anyway, and the weather and the wind and the snow just deteriorated
Over the years.
the covering of the roof to the point where part of it just blew off the roof.
Roger Grease told me that was one of the first things he did when he moved to town, was do the roof on that shed.
So we attended one.
So we talked about it a while ago, and decided at that point we didn't have the funds to allocate to
Spruce it up.
restoration. And I remember that discussion, and someone said, this was 8 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that, someone said, oh, we should just take it down. And my comment, among others, was it would be better to leave it in case someone wanted to use it, or if the church sold the parsonage, someone else wanted to renovate it, it would be better to leave that as a resource. And aside from not patching up that roof, we were leaving it until the insurance company came by last summer maybe it was in the
It was
fall.
August, yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And told us that, gave us a long list of things that needed to happen on the church and on the parsonage. And one was that the shed needed to be demolished, and that was their take on that. Now, obviously, had we decided to renovate it, that would have been fine with the insurance company, but something needed to happen. It couldn't stay as it was. So that's the impetus for this. We probably wouldn't have come here on our own now to demolish the shed. And it was quickly determined by the church that we didn't have a use for that shed. It had been empty, aside from some debris in there, it had been empty for a long time. Given the amount of weather that's happened in the space and the lack of foundation at one corner, there's a good amount of work that needs to be done to bring it up to a usable condition, a condition that the insurance company would be okay with. And given that we had no use for it anyway and hadn't been using it, it made sense for the church to demolish or find someone else that could use the structure. When the decision to remove the asbestos came after several discussions with the building inspector, understanding that any renovation to the shed would require the asbestos to be removed. Any demolition or moving of the shed would all require the asbestos to be removed. And in the asbestos summary, that material was also found in the window, in the gable. So
Really?
yes, so which tells us that it was not as old as we had assumed. Maybe they used old glass, but there was asbestos in the caulking in the window. So it was not just the siding that had asbestos in it.
So is that the reason that the window disappeared, was to deal
They
with
had
the
to take
caulking?
it away.
There you
The
go.
asbestos
What a shame.
company had to take it away. Right, so, we are bound by the asbestos laws that because they found asbestos in the caulking material, the window needed to be removed.
But it could have been recaulked over the years, though.
That could have, right, but once it is found, it is then deemed unusable. So that's a little bit more information about the process of the last 6 months or so.
I have one question before we go on. As it floats in and out of my head. The insurance company didn't think that it could just be there, not used, with just the hole in the roof patched?
No,
They feel it has to be used, or it couldn't just sit there with a private, no entry sign?
it's a hazard. It's not safe as it is now. I think, that something needs to happen to it. Yes, I guess, no, I don't think that they would even be happy if we boarded the whole thing up and put.
No, they mandated that it be taken down, or insurance would be revoked.
So your insurance would be revoked if the structure was not removed?
That and the other long laundry list of things they gave to attend to. We had to show evidence this year that we've taken steps to address the issues that they raised.
Right, and they understand that we are in this process, and that this process may take a while, and they're okay with that. We have been sending them updates so that they don't revoke our insurance during this.
Might I ask one more question before I let other members hear? Is the underwriter changed? In other words, is my property has been changed in the last 2 years from the one I had for like 28 years, and suddenly the agent informed me that a new underwriter was going to cover the insurance.
I don't know about that, but there was, there has been.
The letterhead would change, on the bill and everything.
I don't see any of that. There has been a lot of research with that a few years ago, and this, whether they changed to this company, it was a couple years ago now, that either they decided to change or they decided to stay where they are, but there was a lot of research behind that. But it was a long time before last August.
Thank you.
And who's that company? Who's the carrier? Do you know?
I don't know, Murphy is the agent for the carrier.
But we could find that out with your permission?
I'm sure.
Mine went from Patrons Group to Concord Group in New Hampshire.
Was it shopped around, do you know?
Yes.
So that there was absolutely no underwriter that would take it over?
We didn't shop around for this purpose. We shopped around a few years ago, or maybe it was 2 years ago. It could have been last year.
Actually, I think the shopping run was more of a discussion about whether or not to stay with Murphy, which has always been the traditional carrier of the church's insurance, or whether we receive some benefit from going with a denominational insurer. But the decision was made, I think, to stay with Murphy, and I think it was Murphy's decision if any change was made and who carries, the policy. It was them, it wasn't us. We just made the decision to stay with Murphy.
I would be surprised if another insurance company allowed the shed to stay in its current condition.
So they initially wrote the policy and then they came out afterwards and
They
inspected
inspected,
and...
right. I don't know if you've had that before, but I've had that a few times. Every couple of years, somebody shows up and inspects.
Yes.
Make sure that I'm
So you changed 2 years ago and then they inspected and you're still working?
No, I'm not sure if we did
We
change.
didn't change. Murphy may have changed the
Okay.
carrier of the policy. We just always worked through Murphy.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Any other questions from the commission?
I was wondering, does anyone else in the audience like to make any comments?
Well, I wanted to ask the commission first. Yeah, sorry. Now we'll go on. Any other comments, Michelle or
Yeah,
Richard?
we've had some discussions with the building inspector. The building inspector came out when this all started in the fall, and he advised us to follow the proper protocol and fill out the demolition delay application, but also said that he would support deeming this unsafe. And suggested that we go through this process, but he said that he would support that if...
Condemning it effectively.
Right, and, we talked to you about that on day one, and all agreed that we should instead follow the process, and that's where we are now. But he wasn't, we are following his suggestions, but he had also said that he thought that it was far gone enough that it would...
So he could support condemnation,
Correct.
which can actually bypass demolition permit process.
Correct.
Questions or comments from
Mike is looking at me.
others?
Tim Feeler, Bolton Historical Society. I'm also a licensed home improvement contractor. I also fool around with old buildings for the last 35 years. I didn't really know much about this until I went over and looked at it the other day, finding out that this was going on. I'd like to see the new report, the historical survey.
You may keep
You do
that.
realize that the whole east roof's been redone. It's not the original rafters. There's a lot of other stuff in it. The corner posts, plates, stuff like that, they could conceivably be that old. Building's probably been repurposed at some time. There's an awful lot of wire nails running around. There's some cut nails in there too, so it's possible. I love old buildings. I don't particularly love this one. I'll be blatantly honest with you. You're not gonna like that, but I'm sorry. If you can find somebody who wants to take it off-site or something, knock yourselves out, but I'll tell you the truth. My recommendation right now, I can see the church's point. I really can. I don't know what else I can say other than that.
So you
The
don't...
east side roof is gone, rafters are replaced, they're all sawn, they're later Bottom underpinnings, there's some later stuff in there. Building was reclapped at one point, it's all wire nailed, so it was done at some point. Sheathing, certain sections have been redone. So if you're thinking you're looking at an original structure here, it's not totally original. It's really not. There's been stuff done over on it. Understandable for an outbuilding just maintained through the years. I hate to say it, but 20 years ago would have been the time to save this building before the roof started to leak. Once the roof goes, then it just cascades. And there's so much detritus hanging on the floor that's been holding moisture for so long, it hasn't helped it. There are some full half-log joisting underneath. They have considerable sag in them. I was there, I'm not gonna say I did an extensive look at the thing, I could if you want, but from what I saw, I just kind of, foundation's been, I wonder if it's original. If it is original stone, it's all been reported with Portland cement at some point, which is not original, probably was dry leak.
Where did you see sagging joists, just out of curiosity? Because I looked and I didn't see any.
Hey, what?
I didn't see sagging joists at all.
The half logs?
Yeah.
They have a pretty good sag in them.
Yeah,
Really?
we saw that too, and the rot.
But, I mean, just where about, because you can get in the rear, you can look in the rear and you
The
can see
rear
the
on the
floor.
center span, you look
Right.
under the center of the span, it looks
Yeah.
pretty dropped to me. And that was taking a flashlight on my hands and knees and just going on, looking under there and going, okay, they're half logs. And they looked like they were going like that to me. I don't know. You could straight edge them and take your sag factor in if you want to, but once they've established that memory, you ain't getting it back. I could see the building needing a new bottom end, a new top end. If someone wants to deal with it, they're looking at a fair amount of work to, I mean, if you take it down, you're gonna wind up with some of the bones, and you'll have to go from there. You know, if you wanna go on with it. It's interesting that the west side of the roof, which looks like original rafters, is, as you said, seems to be in better shape than the new side. The ply decking and everything, yeah, it's totally gone.
It's gone, yeah.
Totally gone. The post that's in center left side of the door, as you look at it, that's a replacement. That's all circular sawn stuff. Again, like I said, this is going by me in 15 minutes poking around, just looking at it and going,
Well, when did circular sawing come in? Water power came in first part of the 19th century, right?
well, your circular saw, you're looking at Sister Tabitha Babbitt, who was a shaker who came up with the concept of the circular saw. It's early 1800s, you didn't see it too much. You know, we had sawmills here in town, and earlier than that, you're more than likely going to see sash-on stuff with vertical saw marks. I didn't really see any of that. The bigger timbers are hand-hewn, which
No pit sawing or anything?
I would doubt pit sawing at that point, no.
Because the house was 1798, and we're just saying, well, with the
I'd be
wood cut
surprised
being
if it-
1839, that would be the,
It's conceivable, I'll say, it's conceivable that a lot of the timbers that are in there are that old, yes. Again, the cuts that I saw, just pulled, I pulled a couple nails out of the sheathing. That's slits on straight cuts, those are not forged nails. So that puts it at least 1800, probably a little after. So the time frame could be considered, it's possible that it's that old. All I'm saying is, don't think that everything in there is that old, because it's not. It's had stuff done to it through
well, it
the years,
has
which
been
is understandable.
repurposed a lot.
What's that?
It's repurposed a lot. And
Oh, yeah, no,
even
don't-
finding the horse stall, you'd have to be a little creative.
Totally understandable. Totally understandable. The top plate on the north side facing the house has a fair amount of stuff missing up near the center of the span. This is stuff I'm just trying to remember from a fairly
Yeah, there are
cursory look.
Good pictures in that print that you're holding there. Mr. Bush did an excellent
Yeah,
job.
when I went through it, I saw a couple of places that looked like they might have been gash sawn. Didn't see a whole lot of circular saw in the main beams, but it was all hewn, so.
This is the west. went through the carriage bay. I also thought it looked like the west plate. You almost see it here on the top, that's got a sag to it too. West side facing west, center spans a little sway back. Looks like it in this picture too.
Anybody remember the roof line? It was pretty straight, wasn't it? The
Reasonably
gable
straight.
roof?
It's reasonably straight. I was wondering if the ridge was original, but I didn't look at it long enough to tell, to be honest with you. Like I said, this was by no means a deep historic survey. This was me going over there for about 15 minutes yesterday, because when I was up at Sawyer House, we had the meeting, and I said, oh geez, I want to go down and take a look at it. I'd never been in the building before. So I went down and poked around for a while, and I just kind of went, I know being historical society guy, old building guy, you might not want to hear this. I'm just giving you my personal recommendation. Can it be saved? Yeah, if somebody wants to deal with it on site, not so sure, because I don't think that's going to fit into the church's plans, and I think they're probably looking at other things to put their resources towards than saving that building, which I can kind of understand, to be honest with you. If you can have a party who wants the building and wants to move it, again, this is stuff we went through with the Gates Brazo house, with the Bemis house, and we can see how that all went through the years. You need a high level of masochism to deal with this kind of stuff, folks, believe me. Have any of you taken post and beam buildings apart? I mean, you know, you're looking at work here. It's work. I'm not gonna lie to you. Everything's possible. In carpentry, you can do a lot of wondrous stuff. Sooner or later, you hit the law of diminishing returns, and I don't know if you want to pursue that. You know, I don't know. This is my personal opinion. I'm just building stuff.
Well, we
It's tough.
thank you for looking
Building
at it.
stuff. I mean, I think we all know that. If we've been in there, you know. And that huge pile of newspapers that's been sitting there has not helped one bit. Because all it's done is soaked up water and down into the floor structure, and, you know, once the top end goes, that's when buildings go down. That's why we lose barns, you know, because nobody wants to deal with them anymore. And we're looking at the same thing with our own barn at Historical Society right now. It needs a re-roof, but that barn's in way better shape than this thing. Building's tough. It's in tough shape, so I don't know. You're in a kind of a tough point. I understand the historical aspect of it. Believe me, I do. I would see again, your delay. You're looking for someone who can find alternatives. If you can find an alternative, great. But whoever is going to be the alternative ought to go into it with open eyes.
If it were repurposed, do you think it should be a tear down and rebuild, or moved? The entire thing?
I'd be leery to try and move it the way it is. Heck, I would. I don't know if I'd want to do it. I think you'd have a tough time finding somebody who'd want to move it as is. You know, a situation like that, you've probably seen somebody, if you can find somebody who's willing to take it apart stick by stick, because that's the way you got to do it with that. You got to drive all the pegs out, you know, take the pieces apart. It's a fair amount of work.
And expense.
Yeah, unless you get volunteer slaves.
Slave labor will do it every time.
Who want to go at it, you know, which is fine. If somebody wants to go through that, they can. But again, we went the same thing. Like I said, Gates, I can remember when at the tail end when we were trying to save Gates Brazo, we went over there 2 weekends, and it was a scramble. And if you remember what happened with that was,
The beams are still sitting and buried.
yeah, Paul said he was gonna get to it, and it was more than he thought it was gonna be, and we wound up losing a lot of that building. These are not easy things to do. Granted, that's a small building, it's not that big, but you're
A
looking
little
at,
over 15
you're
feet
looking
by
at
18 feet.
your corners, your plates, midspans and stuff, you're 8x8s, they're 8x8s, so it's pretty big hunks of wood. You're gonna need a crane, probably, unless you have enough manpower to do it, that's how they put it up.
But the good news is, it's short enough and small enough to get through the driveway, get under the power lines, you know.
You
That's
could-
an easier building
You
to
could,
move if you build it.
I'm not saying it can't be moved, it could. I'd be interested in who would wanna do it,
Well, and the septic system is between here and there, or the tank is between,
is it?
to the side, but between the building
Well, if
and the
it's any,
driveway.
if your septic, if the tank is anywhere within the path they have to tank, they're not gonna drive machinery over it, so you're gonna lose that, if that's what you mean.
You can get to the shed without going over the tank, but you don't have full range of the shed without going over the tank. So, you know, it's a logistical issue.
That's gonna make it tough. I mean, you know, with staging and manpower and stuff, you could take it down piece by piece without heavy equipment probably, but then you'd have, you know, do all your markings, tear it all down, and then move it somewhere and then put it back together, but you're probably gonna find some punky stuff on the bottom end for sure, even though it's been resold.
Yeah, it's been resold and even the bottoms of the posts have been redone too.
Yeah,
And the floor is new, Bob said.
A lot of it, the flooring actually looked not as bad as I thought it was gonna be, although probably in the spot where the leaves are, God knows, I mean, that's.
you've seen
can't
more
tell.
than me then, because
But
I was leery of climbing around too much.
Yeah, I went through the whole thing inside and out, and I was actually kind of surprised that where, again, I couldn't assess where it was covered with leaves, but where it wasn't, it was, you know, it's pretty hefty.
Like if somebody at some point put some new.
It looks like when they resold it, they
They put
refloored it.
new 2x on top of it.
Yeah, it's
from what
bigger
you
than
see.
2x actually.
Really?
Yeah, it was probably, or it was an unplaned 2x, so it was a full 2 inches,
Okay.
very thick stuff.
Well, you saw more than I did then. Again, like I said, I only looked at it for about 15
Yeah.
minutes. Just because
Just because you did.
I wanted to. I knew nothing about it. I just got wind of this the past weekend when I ran into you. So I wanted to look, but
I have a question for Michelle and Richard. If it's demolished, how will you get rid of the rubble foundation? Just have it carted away?
The demolition would be a gift from one of the parishioners. And he has the equipment to do that. And he would demolish the building and the foundation completely. We had asked also that he would remove some of the underbrush that's around it because there's been an invasive.
And just grass it over or something?
You got it, keeping an eye on that septic tank. So the result would be more grass.
Open space.
is this a demolish or a takedown with an eye towards saving some of the timbers? Because there's people out there who would be interested in the timbers. If you can find somebody who's willing to take it for the sticks.
If that person finds us, then that would be on the table. That was not something we had discussed because the parishioner can just do the demolition.
I know a possible person who might be interested in the timbers.
Who would come take them
That's
or take them if
to
someone
be
takes them?
determined.
So I think that's the question, the logistics of it, because the parishioner would just demolish throw it in dumpsters
All right,
out.
okay.
And
That's harder than it seems sometimes too, because you know, they wee-wah. Sometimes it's easier to take it down, but
I don't think that was his plan. I think his plan was to use heavy machinery to take it down.
Yeah, probably just, yeah. just
That was the way it was going to be easiest for him.
I mean, there are sick wood people out there. I'm one of them.
Is there anyone-
Oh, look, it's an 8x8. It's chestnut, yeah, somebody might be interested in it.
someone did express interest to the commission in it,
Oh, okay.
and that person is in attendance.
Oh,
We're taking donations now,
well,
and this is, identify yourself,
Hi,
please.
Ron Balco, Green Road. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, so,
Oh, okay.
You scared her off.
but I am interested in doing something, but I don't know.
Well, we've kind of heard the problems from Romance, you know. If it's not gonna stay on site, you're gonna have to,
Right,
somebody's gonna have to take it down.
yeah.
And then if you have ideas of putting it back together again, then
It is expensive and it
It
is
is.
involved, but
It
Rama
is.
had said that she needed a single-car garage.
Well,
I
so.
don't know if that's big enough for a garage.
The architect hat that I'll wear right now, where it questions the size of it, 15 by 18 exterior dimensions means that you're looking at more like 14 by 17 interior dimensions. If there are any posts, you won't fit a car in there, or you certainly won't open your car door. I don't know how big your car is, you know, a good-sized family car won't fit in that garage, and the opening, I did not measure, you might know that.
Does that be the sliding door?
That barn door opening probably isn't wide enough for a car to
There's
fit.
also a center post in the building,
Right.
which really compromises it for
Correct.
garages. And
It's
it
a better-
relies on that to hold it together.
It's a better shed than.
it's a center plate with a center post going
Yes,
down in the
yes,
midspan.
yes, yeah.
The slider actually is on the,
So,
In the east side.
it's opening to the, not only that, it opens to the short dimension too. So if you, that makes, you know, you can't pull in, even 3 feet of the car is gonna stick out from the door if you pull in that. Not only that, you need an entire substantial bottom end on this thing if you
Well, you
expect
need
to put a
slab.
car in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
put a-
It's
you
not,
need to pour a
I
slab.
wouldn't park a car in it today without the floor being really, really, really
Well, you
reworked.
can't, it's elevated anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
you couldn't park your car in there for a lot
no.
of reasons.
No.
I wouldn't park a lawn tractor in
Well,
there.
we get her a smart car.
If you were to move this,
That would be about it.
you need a concrete slab, you need a foundation
Yeah.
under that to
Yeah.
put
You need a full,
the shed on top, and you're gonna, I hate to say it, because I'd love for this to go find a new home, but you're gonna spend a lot of money preparing the site, and then moving it and reconnecting it for electricity.
yeah, I mean, I just want to make it clear, I mean, I'm an old house guy, I'm an old building guy, and I love it. Again, I'd love to see it repurposed if it can, and I just want whoever is thinking of it, knowing what they're getting into here. You know, it's a substantial amount of work and investment to try and save what essentially is going to be the bones of the building. Because, you know, once you start, I can't imagine you're going to want to reuse the sheeting. I mean, maybe some of it you can, but I think a lot of it's probably pretty punky. Some of it's already been redone anyway, so you're not getting the original sheeting anyway, if that's your move, which, but, you know, the frame, there's people that do nothing but take down and repurpose frames and sell them. It's a pretty good business. I'm sure you know.
I think that business is generally geared towards traditional New England barns.
And residents, more
You got it,
residents than
you got it,
anything
where
else.
there's more there to reuse.
Yes.
Where the
Yes.
value is in all of the historic fabric that's still there and in reusable condition.
Yeah, people who sell the salvage materials and buildings generally, yeah, you're not looking at 15 by 18 shades.
It doesn't make money
Yeah,
for those
it's,
people.
as usual, it comes down to that. It's a shame that the roof went on it so long ago, because that's probably what hurt it more than anything. Yeah, it's post beams, corner braced, it's, you know, it's a tough one though, it
any
is.
more comments?
The really good thing about this coming up is that we have learned a lot more about the history of this little shed. And so just having this is very valuable. Everybody hates to see something historic like that go, but unless you have a group that's going to come in and knows what they're doing and volunteers and things like that, it's hard to do that in every single case.
you kind of have to have a mechanism in place to deal with the thing. The equipment,
And it's very nice that someone in the congregation has come forward to help out with it.
Yes.
well, it'd be nice if they could save some of the timber down. But generally, if they pull the backhoe up and just slam it down, you're not gonna save much of it.
Well, yeah, I think the church would be open to someone who wants to come in and take it out, but I don't think we have resource to take it out for someone else.
I can make some inquiry.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'll give you my card.
Well, in view of this, what happens with the demo delay is there can be an up to 6 months delay, mainly to allow some kind of repurposing or salvaging of materials, depending upon your schedule and time of year and who can locate whom. So I guess my final question to you is there any urgency that this has to be done before the end of the month?
The insurance company appreciates that we are in this process and understands that we may be forced to a timeline that the insurance company, forced to a different timeline, that you guys might require a different timeline than the insurance company. And frankly, with it being March now, and it's actually it's not too bad out, but demolition wouldn't be expected in this month anyway. And I would ask if you're considering requiring that delay, if we can look at something that is less than 6 months, given the time that we have already been in this process. Something half that, or 3 or 4 months or something. So there still is time if someone is interested. And frankly, if someone, we would be happy to see it drive off on a truck. And we'd love to make that happen.
Or float away on a helicopter?
That's a possibility.
Well, the person I'm thinking of has had experience with actually moving buildings, historic buildings. So, I don't know. Won't hurt to ask.
Yeah. No.
If we can help it, we can try.
So any further comments from the commission or from the audience? Again, I want to make sure all of you please have signed the record that we can keep with the full. So, I think what we will do is close the hearing, and then we won't make our deliberation on the Access TV. We'll do that probably tonight if we can, and then let you know. I think we're sort of leaning to trying to have some amount of delay simply to see if we can arrange some things and at least repurpose some of the tools. It's not an easy process for any of us, because I think everyone in this room has a respect for historical structures. It's a sad, but I know what I wanted to ask. I think that I was really shocked when I understood you to say when you first contacted me that the insurance agent was saying they would have to withhold any insurance when this small structure was still on the property. I was absolutely shocked.
They see it as a hazard
I mean,
in its current condition. I can't
they could put a fence
defend
around
them.
it.
I can't defend them, but that was not,
Yeah.
that they were
And,
very clear on their demands.
This has sort of raised my awareness to we're in New England, and we have a huge proportion of historic properties, and hopefully not every insurer feels the way that this particular situation has been dictated.
Well, you just prompted a question.
Yeah.
Do you currently have insurance and you're working off a punch list in effect to keep that insurance? Or am I misunderstanding?
No, we currently have, we are
Okay, got it.
insured.
That's what I thought.
We are insured,
Got it,
regardless
okay.
of the
But you have
letters
to follow the
saying,
punch
you gotta
list.
take that shit down, right?
Right,
And we-
I
and we
get
hit
that.
all the other things on that list, and we have been busy. The property maintenance committee has done more this year than they have done.
Yeah,
in a
no, I
while.
get that, okay.
And then to Martha, to your point, you think of the other historic barns in town or in the center of town that are in similar shape or pretty close to it. And how, and I worry about the proximity of the town common to spaces that are potentially hazardous to children. It's the same issue here.
I just point out that it doesn't surprise me with the insurance. We're going through it too at Sawyer House. We have a punch list, actually, and they actually are complaining about the lichen on the roof shingles. When it starts coming to this kind of stuff, that's when I know that,
The lichen on the roof shingles, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
they want to
We could put some of those handsome aluminum strips there and clean it all up and keep
So
it from
when
forming
you start
again.
getting that kind of stuff dictating, this doesn't surprise me at all. That we have to repoint our entire foundation on the driveway side, and there's a bunch of stuff. We have a punch list too that we have to deal with. So this is not that unusual, but sometimes I can't believe what they want. But,
Well, with that, I want to thank everyone for coming this evening. And I have to catch a 4 o'clock plane tomorrow. I will at least drop you an email about the decision and any delay. I was thinking I would try and prepare a, demolition delay or not preferably preserved letter, but I didn't do that. I waited to see what was happening here. So if you will please be patient, and we'll try and help you work this out to everyone's advantage. Thank you very much, and I'm closing the public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Teresa.
Ron, do that if you want to get in touch with me.